Miklos, picking up your story where the Jews were rounded up, two questions on that. First of all, could you give us some details on how the roundup took place? And then after that, any information give us about your experience during the waiting period before you were put on the train, and what role you played and your interaction with it.
The roundup was uniform. In the end of April, they notified in every town or in the villages, the Jews, that in 3 or 4 days they have to move either to the county seat or city, or they have to move in the town into a special part of town where they were horribly congested. 50, 60 people to a room, you know. But they're limited and told by streets, you know, that within the limits of these streets in these areas, which will be a ghetto. Or they moved them, like us, into a brick factory in Szilágy, in the county of Szilágy. And this is how it happened. They concentrated them because this was only a temporary solution. Consequently, they massed the Jews on a very small place together, congested incredibly, 50, 60 people to a room or more. But they told that within these 5 or 6 or 8 streets, this part of town, usually where many Jews lived before, will be a ghetto, or, as I told you, brick factories, or in the city of Décs in Transylvania, they moved them, the Jews, out into a forest and park where they were soaked by the May rains under the free sky in the Bungur area. More horrible. And for instance, in Ruthenia, where Maxwell comes from, of course, because of the unsanitary conditions and the starvation and putting the sick people together with the healthy people, insane people, children, whatnot, soon epidemics broke out. And this gave the pretext, because Eichmann induced the Hungarians, well, ask us that we should take over the Jews. And the fateful request was made by the Council of Ministers on the 20th of April, 1944. They asked the Germans to take over the Jews as a whole. It's 820,000 people in principle. You know that before the Germans asked only for 50,000 able-bodied Jews. Hungarians knowingly were induced to make the request. The fateful request was made, and Eichmann was ready to oblige. And after that, the deportation started. The deportations went by gendarmerie commanding districts. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, because the gendarmerie was participating and carrying out this horrible work, the Hungarian gendarmerie. Eichmann had a small staff of about little more than 100. They couldn't mark, round up, identify, and deport hundreds of thousands of people. Only people who knew the country, who knew their fellow citizens could do that. But Eichmann, with his little staff, got 20,000 Hungarian gendarmes at his disposal, and I don't know how many thousands of policemen in the cities. Gendarmes were stationed only in the countryside. So this happened in a uniform way in the whole country, included the suburbs of Budapest. The 14 precincts of Budapest, that's an entirely different matter. There the foreigners intervened and there was no deportation.
Your own personal story, your own personal
Yeah.
experiences, what happened with the roundup? Was it voluntary?
No, in the villages they were telling, like to us, that we are going, you should prepare yourself 30 kilogram per person, if you can, and we shall pick you up at a certain hour and a certain date. In our case it was May the 1st. And the gendarmes came for us to the house of my uncle. And from there they went also to the other Jewish families in the village, and they brought us to the railroad station. Some boxcars were waiting, and from there they took us for a 55-mile ride to Szilágyszomjú, to this brick factory.
No thought, did you have any thoughts of running away instead of being rounded up?
Stupidly not, because especially for us it would have been easy, because all of us spoke Romanian and we had relatives in the Romanian side of Transylvania, and we could have got over easy. Before the roundup, it was impossible because things happened so fast, and secondly, one couldn't get away from the local Hungarian population, which was observing every step of ours. Jews escaped to Romania, but more, and all were saved. But all these Jews mostly came with false documents from Budapest and from other parts of the country, which could be not identified as Jews, and they got through, slipped through. Us, we couldn't get out of the village unnoticed.
What were your feelings at the time, your thoughts between receiving when you received the notice? What were your feelings?
It started. Something horrible started with an open end which we just cannot tell what is happening or what's going to happen. Some open-ended things started, but none of us thought about sterilization industry or carrying out atrocious medical experiments on living human beings, on gas chambers, crematories, assembly line killings. But my cousin, who just came back from his service in Russia and who saw the extermination of the Jews there, it was no secret. And some others know it. We knew that the open end might be a very horrible open end. But we just dragged along and went along with it. After all, the Jewish attitude to persecution through the centuries has been A, compliance, right? Not to oppose it. B, while complying, trying to alleviate. They didn't understand that here they are faced with something very different. So that means try to comply and make a compromise, and while you make a compromise, try to gain something and alleviate. We didn't know that this is something 20th century, this is an entirely new game. And with that you can make only once a compromise while you are dying, right? That's the only reconciliation. What else can you make a compromise with the gas chamber? Walk in, right?
Do you recall any other of your feelings at the time?
These were later my feelings.
At the time of the roundup.
Terrible, uneasy thing, you know. What's going to happen to my parents? What's going to happen in Budapest? What is going to... Where is this all going? And I had a kind of a mystical premonition. I remember the speech of Hitler in 1942, almost. Verbatim. He told it so clearly. Why didn't people want to understand? He told like this, and this stuck in my young mind. You will remember, if you erinnern, die Reichstag-Rede, wo ich sagte, you will remember the Reichstag speech to the Nazis, you know? When I told, wenn das internationale Judentum irgendwie einblindet, ein Weltkrieg für das Ausrotten europäischer Völker zu fördern, if the Jews imagine that they will start a world war to exterminate European races, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Ausrotten europäischer Rassen, sondern Ausrotten Judentums aus Europa sein. Then the result will be not the extermination of European races, but the extermination of European Jews. Sie haben mich als Propheten ausgelacht. They laughed over me as a prophet. Laughed at me. Von diesen, die damals lachten, lachten unzählige nicht mehr. From those who were laughing at that time, countless are not laughing anymore. Und die jetzt nächstes noch lachen, werden vielleicht bald auch nicht lachen. And those who feel like laughing now will soon not laugh either. Well, can you be clearer than this? Of course, Hitler didn't specify exactly. Crematory number 1, 2, 3, 4 in Auschwitz. But can you be clearer? Even clearer is Goebbels in his speech. You know, and all this came back in that moment. But it is even before. With his beautiful Rhinelandese accent, do I love it. Die gänzliche Ausschaltung des Judentums aus Europa ist ja keine Frage der Moral. The complete elimination of the Jews from Europe is not a question of morality, sondern die Sicherheit der Staaten und die Völker, but it's a question of the security of states and peoples. Der Jude wird immer so handeln, wie es von seinem Rassenwesen hervorgeht. Er kann nicht anders. The Jew will always act as it comes from his racial instinct. He cannot do otherwise. Wie der Kartoffelkäfer die Kartoffelfelder zerstört, ja zerstören muss, so zerstört der Jude die Völker und die Staaten. As the potato beetle destroys the potato fields, must destroy in order to live, so does destroy the Jews, the nations and the states. Dagegen gibt es nur ein Mittel, radikale Beseitigung der Gefahr. Against this there is only one means, radically eliminating the danger. How clear can you get? How clear can you get? All this is history. I, a 13 years old bar mitzvah kid, remember it. I know Hitler's gutter Austrian accent. I know Goebbels' Rhineland accent. Now, how clear can you get? Of course, in this moment, it came back. I told it to my aunt. She told that I shouldn't tell it to my uncle.
At which moment? At which moment did it come back?
Well, they told us that we will be picked up and they should prepare. My uncle and aunt were old. My cousin was a young guy. I remember how he took under his arm my uncle and my aunt and proudly walked through the village with them. Head up. And then we put boxcarts on the railroad station, and from there we were brought to Silac-Shumyu.
What were the conditions like during that trip?
Easy, relatively. The horrible was when we were taken away because there was no need to congest us. Well, there were other Jews also from the village in the boxcar.
What was the scene like at the brick factory when you arrived?
It was already infernal, Dantean, very congested when we arrived, you know. And with more people arriving practically every day and every hour, getting insufferable. In retrospect, I do not understand that why didn't we see clearly that this can be only a temporary thing, you know? You cannot keep people in such a condition for any duration of time. It is surprising that They kept us for 3 weeks almost. More. It's strange that we didn't see that ever. And then it is only a step towards another goal. And then the other goal, well, today it is so easy to say these things. Other goal. And what kind of goal? Children, cripples, sick, pregnant, insane, old and more old. What kind of a goal? Is it reasonable to assume that these people can go to work? And the conditions were terrible there. The congestion and mostly, and practically no food. Brought some food with us, and then 0 hour was approaching, which meant, to put us into the boxcars for Auschwitz. And then came, of course, questioning the people with instruments to refresh their memory. Where did they put their stuff? To whom did they give it? Where did they bury it? Where did they hide it? Of course, the authorities wouldn't go for lost property. But I must tell you, until the Hungarian-Slovak border, where the train was handed over to go through Slovakia and then to Silesia, to Auschwitz, until the Hungarian-Slovak border, I didn't see any Germans. All this was done by Hungarians. The concentration, torture in the brick factory, pressing into the boxcars, guarding anything. I don't know. I just can't understand why didn't Lali, my cousin, and me go to Romania. Maybe because we were, historically speaking, Hungarian Jews in Transylvania so strongly against the Romanians, you understand? And so much identifying ourselves with Hungary that, as my old uncle used to tell, well, you cannot imagine that Hungarian anti-Semitism can be so bad as Romanian anti-Semitism. Was he wrong? Was he mistaken? So, and then we were pressed into the boxcars in our boxcar. You know this? Do you know this 16-ton little European boxcars? Or only the 70-ton American ones?
Big ones.
The big ones, and the European little boxcars. I wish we would have had a 70-ton boxcar. Even so, it is too small for 80 or 90 people, but you can imagine the 16-ton, 1/3 of it in size. And we got 2 buckets, one full of water and one for our needs. That one with the water became empty in no time, and that one became full in no time. And off the train went.
When the roundup notice was sent out,
Well, in villages noticed, but in cities there was a poster on the wall.
On the poster, did it say the purpose of what would happen to you at all?
No, Jews, and there was one definition. Of course, they didn't take any conversion or religious belief into consideration. The category was who has to wear the yellow star and not to wear the yellow star. Those who to wear the yellow star, these were whom considered Jews, he might have been already 2 generations Christian or etc. The Germans beautifully told the Hungarians when I told that somebody is Jewish or Christian or wir fragen nicht nach Religion, wir Deutschen. We Germans, we don't ask after religion. We have the race. So those a megkülönböztető jelzés sárga csillag viselésére kötelezettek. Those who are by the law obliged to wear the distinctive mark, meaning the yellow star.
And you wearing the yellow star?
Of course.
From when?
April the 6th.
1944.
And then, but anyhow, I knew that I'm obliged, and everybody knew. So these people have to report, let's assume, during the coming 3 days, by ending that day, in that district circumscribed by the following streets in the city, or in the villages. They told, simply prepare because you will be picked up and you will be taken. No explanation where, why, what, nothing. And you didn't write to your congressman either. What are you asking? I mean, they gave orders.
Was any statements made after you were picked up at any point in time before you were put on the train to Auschwitz as to where you're going?
Nothing, 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 nothing. When you asked the gendarmes or anybody else, the answer was, at least, I can tell you nothing. Which is a military answer. Where are you taking us? Where I got orders to take you. Well, they want a standard military answer. Stupidity. In Nagyvárad, or rather, when my cousin's parents, and then I heard from Jews, there were some German soldiers here and there, not participating, but they were present, and they were on the other train where the Jews were put into the boxcars. And probably this was a touch of good humor in the Third Reich, that when the Jews asked where are they going, man wird Seife kochen von euch. Man shall make soap out of you. But that was not with us. We got no information whatsoever, and if we asked, we got the standard answer. Where we have orders to take you, and I can tell you nothing. I'm not so sure that on the lower echelon the gendarmes and the police knew it, Of course, they knew, and that was not difficult to guess, that nothing good is expecting us. From the very treatment, from that congestion, from that brutality, from that search for valuables, from that brutalizing. What good can people expect who are kept 3 weeks in a brick factory in such a congested conditions? What good can expect people who are beaten in such a way as I described you and dishonored, that they should reveal their property? Is there enough or any chance that they will come back for their property or what? What good is expecting people who are pressed in 80 or 90 in such a little boxcar, about 1/3 of the American boxcar? No. It becomes, in retrospect, more and more obvious that that meant that.
Was there much discussion on the train, boxcars?
No, especially in our boxcar, there were some insane people. They read with us some other deportations, at least. They took the insanes of the train and shot them. Not in our case.
And what were your thoughts during the trip? And did they change at all?
No. Terrible insecurity and terrible question mark. Where I am going. In Silesia at Bochumin, Odeberg station, that's Czechoslovakia still, before you enter Polish Silesia. Some American bombers were flying over us, very high, flying fortresses and liberators. We saw from the contacts which they were drawing in the air. That was a moment which I will never forget. So there they are above me. I liked very much the Americans, much more than I like them now. And I had faith in them. That's the way I was brought up. And then I consoled myself. Oh, those pilots up there, coming from another world. They are the emissaries of Lincoln, who liberated the slaves. They would help if they could. Probably they cannot help. What did I know about the Scholte files? What did I know about Cordell Hull? What did I know about Alan Dulles sending back a report from the Bern embassy that there are wild rumors circulating that the Germans plan to exterminate 4 million Jews with chemical means, but I think that these are only wild rumors spread by English Jews. They were flying over us. We closed them clearly through the window.
There were windows in your boxcar?
Yeah. They were with barbed wire, closed, but you could see through them. Well, the boxcar windows. They put only barbed wires on them.
Were there any other incidents that you recall during that trip?
No. Just the usual routine. We still had some food. Water was scarce. There was unbearable heat. And there was congestion. And there was suffering. And my uncle asked me, as I told you before, so what is he going to do with us? Is he going to kill us? He never believed it, what is it? It was kind of a good joke. Like I would say, he's going to some kind of a mugger attack me when I walk home from the bus station, right, It is possible, but highly improbable, right? So that was it. And then we arrived to Auschwitz.
Before that, during the trip, were you given any more food or water?
No.
At all?
No, in Auschwitz, the railroad station of Auschwitz, not the camp. Auschwitz railroad station with all these damn Gothic letters, I still remember, We were allowed, because we couldn't get into the camp, there was such a congestion of transport. Never was in Auschwitz such a congestion of transports and gas chambers and crematories. They burned the people then under the free air, as during this Hungarian transport. They were hit with more than 500,000 people in a few weeks. Nothing like it happened. So they let us to wait several hours during the day, and we didn't get into Auschwitz, not to Auschwitz, but to Birkenau, Brzezinka, until 11 o'clock at night. And as we stood in Auschwitz on the railroad station, they let us off on the gate. That time we were all the German guard, to get some water into the car. That was it. And and then we began to move the train at 10, 11, I cannot just calculate that. It was June, and it was already dark, In June it is light until 9:30, 10, dark. And then they were moving us in. There was Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II. There were 2 concentration camps, if you read up on Auschwitz I, was many times visited by the International Red Cross. That was okay. Fair game. And then about 3 kilometers across the railroad track, you go through such an overpass. And there was the horror, nicely carted away. Birkenau. They call it Polish Brzezinka. And then the train went through, that gate. There was a special Judenrampe, giving it into that immense camp where there were sometimes 100,000 people, Never really much less. And through that gate, we were given in into the Judenrampe, where the selection took place, at night. It was May, no, it was it May the 31st or June the 1st? I don't know. And then the selection took place. Mengele came out. And another horrible experience, because not far from the railroad track, there were these trenches dug where they burned the people because the crematories couldn't handle it, There were only 4 crematory gas chamber combinates, monuments to German culture, And there were these trenches, and there they burned these people under open sky. And at night it's lit up, and it terribly, from the crematory it lit up also, And the smoke, and it was a rainy day before, and the clouds were low, and somehow this terrible scent of human flesh burning, I knew it from the bombings, I could only make the difference. The pulverized brick has also a terrible smell, but human flesh and human hair, And I somehow felt it, because those smoke was pressed down by the thing, and there we saw, from the heat, these dead bodies burning in the trenches. They were somehow convulsing themselves and almost jumping off. So my cousin told me, I'm going to throw us into a fire here or what? Again, more joking than anything else. And then we were ordered out from the train, stand for the selection.
You could tell that those were bodies?
Clear. Even clearer when those who were selected to survive were led away closer to them, To C-Lager. The Auschwitz A, B, C-Lager, Krema 1, 2, 3, 4 crematory gas chamber, crematory number 1, 2, 3, 4. When we were led away there, it was clearer, Then it was clearer. We just saw the fire, and this bulldozer or whatnot, trenches. Crematories couldn't handle it during the heat of the Hungarian transports. I'm just laughing, when I think about another related subject, the Kastner affair, Kastner tried to get, some Jews ransomed, and Eichmann played with him, right? You remember the famous Joel Brandt Kastner? Blood for merchandise, merchandise for blood. I don't know, 10,000 trucks, 20,000 trucks, etc. Used only on the Eastern Front, just to split the anti-Hitler coalition, But I wonder, even then, never was working Auschwitz with such a full steam as during this so-called 6-week grace suspension period, when the Allies were supposed to make up their mind whether they go for this exchange or not. So were not Nazis destroying their merchandise? What is the logic? They told that they will hold, the destruction process until they come to an end, and they gave a deadline, right? They never held it for a moment. As a matter of fact, never in the history of the final solution is there such a high killing rate as in these 6 weeks where they were supposed to stop. Kastner would have done much better. Instead of spawning all kind of impossible dreams with the SS, he would have told us what is waiting for us, and he knew it. But he informed only his charmed circle in Cluj. Therefore, he was shot in Israel, as you know, after he was acquitted by an Israeli court. That's why the sentence was passed over him. An enraged Transylvanian Jew shot him. In such situation, the only thing what the Jewish council, Kastner or anybody else could have done was to inform us what kind of a fate awaits us. And then you would have seen resistance or whatnot.
I interrupted you when you were talking about being on the platform with your cousin.
Oh, another platform where really the Judenrampe getting out from the trains. Well, Mengele came by with a selection process. Absolutely polite with everybody. Gnädige Frau, Herr. At the point, they put my aunt and uncle, close to 70, on the left side. And my cousin stood up and told that he feels also sick in order to go with his parents. And Mengele hit him with his riding stick that he should go back to the living ones. He understood it that he wants to stay with his parents and therefore he says that he is sick. That's what happened. And then those who got to the left, the old, children, crippled, pregnant, mothers with small children, those who complained on a organic sickness, anyhow. The ones who couldn't work well, Ever marched away. I heard conversations, Why do you take little children away, etc.? And old people, oh, we Germans are well organized. The old ones will take care of the little ones while you are working. They are going into a rest camp. They were marched away. And of course, I was 7 months in Auschwitz, so I found out all the mysteries of the place. They were marched into the courtyards of the crematories and the gas chambers. It was nice flowers, some prisoners in the stripped clothes, were working on the flower beds, looked good. And then at the gate there was written in many languages where the transport came from, disinfection showers. They went in, nobody paid attention that the door closed hermetically, like a fortress, like a bunker's door. Once they were inside, there were fake douches there, etc., etc. Nobody paid even attention that there were columns there which were perforated, They just thought ventilation or heating. Or if they thought anything. I never spoke with anybody who was coming out from there. Couldn't ask them. I know what it looked like.
What were your feelings at the time?
Oh, I was not, in that, because that's a gas chamber. I went to the right side.
When the selection was being made, what were your thoughts?
Numb. I just waited for the next thing to happen. I thought maybe for a moment about it that the old and the sick are there. It made sense for a moment that these people cannot work, and I knew why I went to this side because I looked around me. I saw everybody in good condition, at least tall, if not aged. So far so good. And numb. When you arrive to such kind of scenes, then you are like, they hit you in the head, you cannot really react normally. And hindsight now is sitting in your office is very easy after almost 50 years, you know. Numb. All what I can recall is a numbness and wait for the next thing to happen. Scene was infernal. The flames shooting out from the chimney of the crematoria. That dim light, that shouting of the SS, that terrible smell pressed down on the camp, pools of water from the rain before, and those trenches with the burning bodies in them. Dante's Inferno was a terrible scene. And then we were led away, and we got a real disinfection shower. Everything was taken away from us. Our hair was shaved, of the girls too, but not together with us, separated by gender. And then with everything taken away from us, we were tattooed, and then we got into this stripped concentration camp uniform, clothes, whatnot. And we were taken to a barrack. The barracks had bars on the window. There were other prisoners there. Not far from us were the gypsies, gypsy barrack. And we were just put in there, in the courtyard, Appellplatz, where always this terrible counting took place. And then finally SS appeared. I never saw him afterwards. So I don't know too many people, but I know some. And there is one person whom everybody knew in Auschwitz. You could know German officers, Nazi SS officers, not know, but one everybody knew, and that was Mengele. You know, everybody knew Mengele. Well, I was getting, close to him through my work later, and he put me on his experimental station to wash the floors and practically saved me. And I was always feeling bad until they didn't find him dead. If they get him like they got Eichmann, I have to testify, and I cannot tell a lie on the oath. I must tell that he was good to me. And that's about the last thing that I wanted to do, to tell that Mengele was good to me, and say something good about him, Although I can tell lots of bad things about him too. But it is better so. I am quite happy that he dropped dead me without testifying, It happened all right. Dr. Josef Mengele. And then this German came, and I never forget. He held us a speech. Of course, the lingua franca in the camp was German. You spoke German with the fellow prisoners who were not Germans. You spoke German, with everybody. That was, everybody knew something of it. Poles always knew German. Russians didn't know but learned, Czechs, Austrians knew. Jews mostly knew German, So they could speak to us. But not every Hungarian Jew, especially not from Transylvania. They didn't know anything except Hungarian. They were thoroughly assimilated. And then this German comes out, that I will never forget. And we had to line up, the newcomers. Ihr seid jetzt in einen deutschen KZ eingelangen. You arrive now to a German concentration camp. Von hier gibt es nur einen Ausweg, durch den Kamin. From here, there is only one way out, through the chimney. Wenn es euch nicht passt, könnt ihr euch immer auf den elektrischen Stacheldraht werfen. If you don't like the idea, you can throw yourself always on the electrical barbed wire fence. That was the presents, the welcoming address. And you know what? Somehow not even now did I believe that this is true. I thought that it's a kind of a exaggerated threat. Might be some truth in it, but by far not all of it. You know, sometimes, you know, human horror reaches a point like, you know, the ear cannot catch sound higher than 500 vibrations, you know? And maybe with the horror it is always so. You cannot absorb and you cannot digest, you know, an excessive amount of horror. Because I want to explain that, well, he told us quite clearly, right? Well, maybe I didn't want to die with 14 years or 15 years. Maybe that was it. And then we went into a barrack where we were assigned. And there were some other prisoners inside. You know, these racks 4 floors high. And there was a prisoner on the lower rack. Was there already. So we wanted to find out from him what is going on. So an older prisoner, I mean Hungarian Jew, who didn't speak German so well as I did, asked me, hey, Miklos, come, ask him. Now what should I ask him? What? He was sitting up in his bed like this, not sitting, laying down. Leave me out of it, you know, I mean, you mumble some words in German, ask him if you want to. So he saw that I was not in the mood, you know, to ask questions or to interpret questions, you know. I was saturated, you know, and he went and with his bad German, you know, I mean, he began to ask this Jew, please, tell, speak. What happened? What go on here? You know, I tried to give it in English, you know, in this bad German of his. And the Jew was just not answering. Please, speak me. Where are our parents? Where are our children? They separate from us. Where are they? No answer. Sitting there, I see this. And then he takes him and shakes him gently. Please, speak. And then, I'll never forget this Jew. He was a shamus of the synagogue in Lvov in Poland. I found it out later, you know. Sigh tore out from his chest. 2,000 years of Jewish suffering were in that sigh. And crawled out and went to the window, taking with him this young Hungarian Jew. And from through the bars of the window, the crematory could be seen. There was by this time dawn and this heavy black smoke coming out of it. Looks at him. And he answered in good German, you ask me, where are your parents and where are your children? Don't be sorry for them, because at least they don't suffer anymore. For them it is over. Look, you see that smoke there coming out from the chimney? There are your parents, your grandparents, your children, all in that smoke. But don't grieve for them, because for them at least it is over. I never saw such an outburst of this. Young, you are a goddamn liar, and then in Hungarian, roh, strici, hazug, kurva, szar. You're a liar, this, that, and names, adjectives. But Jew didn't protest, he just crawled back on his lower rack and there he rested. And there was, of course, a terrible outburst between us, a horror, you know. And then another Transylvanian Jew with a 5-year-old son, just before the deportation, he bought him a toy riding horse, you know. I said, hey, Miklos, come here, you see, my son is riding there on the top of the smoke, on top of the clouds with his horse, you see, he's riding there, don't you see him? And with a horrible laughter, he threw himself in a corner and fell asleep. I tell you, a limit what a human being can take. But with what a force he dragged me to the window to show how his 5-year-old son is horse riding on his toy horse, you know, I mean, on the top of the crematory clouds.
Could you describe Eichmann? Not Eichmann, sorry, Mengele.
Dr. Mengele. Dr. Josef Mengele. I don't know where to start. An insane Nazi, convinced Nazi, pseudoscientist, who was very deep in his Nazi convictions, namely the race theory, the red herring, and that the modern world must be based on race theory. And he does an immeasurable service to the German Reich, and only that matters because his religion and his God is Germany. Because he has an opportunity that nobody had before him. Hospitals have to fight for 1 or 2 dead human bodies to dissect and to learn and to experiment. And he has almost an unlimited quality of living human beings with whom we can experiment, freeze them into cubes of ice, cut them. Wahrheit in Wissenschaft, truth in science, which probably reached its glacial peak when they inserted animal sperma into Jewish women, whether you can in vitro fertilize a woman with animal sperm or whatnot. So he does a real great job, you know. The Jews are subhuman, like mushroom, like tuberculotic bacilli. One kills even innocent people like rabbits and sparrows, then why not Jews? But there can be some use for science, and therefore in his experimental station, you know, he commissioned the best Jewish medical professors from Strasbourg and Prague University to work for his insane medical experiments with living human beings, and with a dream to solve the riddle how twins are born, and then to make German women in that way pregnant, that they should bear only twins to make the Herrenvolk, the master race, you know, quickly grow.
Could you,
Otherwise, he could mix this, you know, with the greatest civility and rationalness, changing sometimes into the most cruel thing and returning to it, listening to Mozart and to Beethoven records during gassing procedures, after selection process, and, you know, he was terribly cynical. I could tell you examples of his cynicism.
please describe for us your personal impressions?
Well, this is a sum total. I was with him 6 months. Saw him every day.
What did you observe?
Well, I mean, do you want cynicism? Good. I will oblige. Have you heard about the Sonderkommandos? These special Jewish commandos which operated the gas chambers and the crematories. which were liquidated every 2-3 months. You know that they selected Jewish dentists for dental work, and they had to tear out from the dead gassed bodies, you know, the golden teeth and the teeth, you know. That was the dental work. But these people, you know, I mean, well, the SS was only operating the least, because people went nuts from this kind of work. And then at the Wannsee conference, you know, Himmler and Heydrich and people decided that, well, of course, you know, to exterminate the Jews, this is a necessary sanitation, like the Roseman coming and exterminating cockroaches, you know, and bedbugs. But it is inadmissible when you carry out, as Himmler told, a glory which will be never written. Was he wrong? I'm sitting before you. It's inadmissible that the master race should get infected by this process, because they went nuts, they went on drugs. So, devise, you know, this assembly like killings and concentration camps. Every dirty work is done by Jews. Only the SS bring, you know, the Zyklon 2 gas, which is dropped in from the top into these columns which I described to you, perforated. Of course, you know that no vestige should remain. These people live good. Everything what the Jews bring, the transports, is theirs. They can eat and live it up. Only every 2-3 months, they are exterminated. And then a new Sonderkommando, and a new one. Well, I think it was the 12th or the 13th Sonderkommando who already somehow got some inking of it, what is waiting for them, in September 1944. And they waited for the day and they organized the resistance movement. They had relative easiness with nitroglycerin and other things, you know, and they made Molotov cocktails, etc., etc. And when they came for them, the SS, telling them, well, boys, you work good, now you go to another duty, but first you will go into a rest camp. So prepare your stuff that you should be able to transfer you. And then they took them out to the courtyards of the crematories and machine gunned them. And then they threw them into the crematories. So these people knew that already, and when they lined them up and told them, well, come on, let's go moving, they didn't move. Only one Hungarian Jew moved. Most of them were Greeks, and they didn't even move. So what is that? Come on, move. And they just threw a Molotov cocktail before the SS foot, which exploded and incinerated. The SS at that moment, you know, retreated from the area because other Molotov cocktails flew. And then the siege started. The siege went on, I think, you know, the whole afternoon and evening. Then I tell you how I experienced that. Because that was at 1 o'clock p.m. at noon. And then finally the SS moved in troops, besieged the whole thing, and they were concentrated in crematory number 3, and they besieged regularly, took, you know, crematory number 3, and they set it afire. We saw that all during the revolt, and as the crematory burned, they could have chosen, you know, the surviving fighters with the Molotov cocktails and whatnot to burn alive. They preferred to come out and to be shot. That was an easier death. And that's what happened. And then they took that crematory. But they put out at least crematory number 3 from circulation for a while. So that's what happened in fact. Now I will tell you how we found out about it. We worked in the experimental station. I cleaned the floor, the thing, you know, the professors from Prague, from Strasbourg, from Cologne worked their scientific job. And at once we hear a tremendous explosion around 1 o'clock when the whole thing started, and the clattering of machine guns and hand arms and whatnot. And in no time the SS come in, lay down, and kick it us. Wherever we were, we had to lay down, and when anybody moved, we got a good gun beating him in that position. And so it went until 4 or 5, and then finally we were allowed, you know, to get up and to get back to our points. Especially the Jewish professors were badly beaten up and bled, etc., etc., blue eyes, black eye, whatnot. So finally the professors got together in the evening and they finally decided that they will talk to Mengele. When he comes next morning in, they will tell him that they expect him to do, that he expects them to do scientific work and to concentrate on scientific work, when in such conditions you cannot do any scientific work. He should somehow master and he should somehow restrain these people from such kind of things. So they were really decided and determined. And enter Mengele next morning around 10, 11 o'clock. And they march up towards him, and these professors bondage them, black-eyed and whatnot. And they want to talk. Comes Mengele. What happened to you? Did you fall down during the blackout during the night and hurt yourself? How come that you have a black eye? At that point, they saw this boundless cynicism, and they just went back to their place and worked. This was not the man to whom you can complain or to explain something. That's what I meant by cynicism. What happened to you? Did you fall down? Was it blackout? You must take better care of yourself, you know. You should watch your step. How come that your eyes are blue? So, do you get the point? And I could go on and on and on. Can you interrupt for a second? I want to go to